So what have we achieved in the 20 years since this book was published? Well, I welcome any contributions on this in the discussion, but it does seem to me that there is a much greater awareness of the business of street design than there was in 1990. And there is, although it probably wouldn't satisfy me, there is more emphasis on provision for pedestrians and cyclists and giving them priority over motor traffic in certain degrees. And there's the DDA response as well, the response to the needs of people with a mobility impairment. The response in the UK, I would say, has been pretty stunning. Almost every street has had modifications to allow wheelchairs to cross. And laws have been introduced to ban parking at drop curbs so that they're not blocked to wheelchairs. And I would pose the question, you know, in this regard, are we the best in Europe? We've also seen the emergence of numerous guidance documents, certainly amongst all the different, amongst the traffic authorities, local authorities, but also targeted nationally. 20-mile-an-hour zones have more or less become mainstream, although nothing like as mainstream as elsewhere yet. We've also had the arrival of home zones, although I'm not sure I really call that progress, because we started introducing home zones at exactly the same time that other European countries were deciding they weren't going to pursue them anymore. So, discuss. I think one of the big achievements is we have moved on from looking purely at residential areas and the safety issue, and now looking more intensively and in practical ways at Main Street design. What have we achieved in 20 years? Well, this is an audience with design interests, but we have to remember that traffic calming began, the driver for it was the reduction of accidents and casualties. And although there's been no national study of how many lives have been saved as a result of traffic calming schemes, I think we can be pretty sure that lots have. Studies have been done in London which have demonstrated it very clearly, like a 1% in reduction in speed leading to a 3% reduction in the number of collisions and things of that sort. I didn't want to bore you with all the details of the data, but it can be little doubt that the fact that people are driving more slowly in areas where people live has saved many lives and has contributed to the national decline in the fatality rate. I mentioned the design guidance which has been produced, and we have authors sitting here. Again, we don't need to dwell on that, but there has been big effort, I think, put in the urban design and street design community to try to rectify the approaches of the past. Now, this is my little personal rant here. Things we've learned. Lower speeds mean pure casualties, okay, good. Black spot treatment doesn't work, this is for road safety engineers. Black spot treatment is where they target areas with known accident records. It might work on main roads, it doesn't work on residential areas because the accidents are too few and too scattered for that to work. Traffic calming is mainstream and should be done as a matter of course, and I think in most new areas and urban extensions and so on, that is the case. It's also been learnt to some extent that good design brings economic benefits, in particular in shopping streets. And main streets need calming too, and all street users need consideration. I think, you know, if one was to bang on about that now, it would be accepted by most. But there's lots of things that we haven't learnt, and I'll just quickly run through those. We haven't learnt how to include environmental improvements in traffic calming schemes. Many of our schemes are just as boring and ugly as the ones done 20 years ago. We haven't learned how to design attractive surfaces, for example, in home zones. And we haven't learned how to drive over humps. You know, that's what we get. All you need to do, select third gear, 18 miles an hour, and proceed. It's calm, less emissions, less noise, and you don't get stressed. But has anybody ever explained that to anybody? Has there ever been any departmental guidance or television adverts to say this is what you should do? No. So it's just been left to people to go brakes and accelerator all the way through. We haven't learned how to place cushions. Now, you know, I mean, at home you know about scatter cushions. Well, our approach to speed cushions in Britain, I'm afraid, is just like scatter cushions. They're all over the place. If the road's a wide one, oh, stick another one in. We have 3 across. So where are the drivers supposed to go? Drive in the middle, drive at the left, or park car, they better go over that side. And you get cars weaving about. It's ridiculous. It was never done like that in Germany, where these things were developed. And the examples in the guidelines will show you how it should be done. And cyclists need separate provision if they're to be accommodated safely. Anyway, cushions, I said, we could go on all night. We haven't really learnt to build without clutter. We've got quite good at removing clutter from certain schemes, but we haven't learnt how to stop putting clutter up everywhere else. And we haven't learnt how to maintain and clean our streets. So even quite well-designed streets often have piles of muck and takeaways around the litter bins and stuff. So they still look a mess, even if the design is good. We haven't learned how to deal with priority at junctions. And this is a crucial thing. And the one thing you can take away tonight and say I've learned or realised, now you probably know it already, but it's so crucial. When you drive on the continent, you must give way to vehicles that are approaching you from the side. Now, this isn't the rule in Britain, and we're alone in this. And potentially it's lethal when you're driving aboard. If you don't know that, and you're not told it when you cross the channel, you're not told it. But it's absolutely vital. People just say, oh, bloody French drivers are coming out in front of me like that. They don't realise that they have the legal right. Now, that simple difference means that our home zones and our traffic-calmed areas have a disadvantage, because on the continent, all they have to do is have a crossroads, and everyone slows down at the crossroads because they have to make sure there's nothing coming from the side. Whereas here, we assume that if it's a straight road, we have the priority. And therefore, we don't have that sort of built-in traffic calming rule. And it's a real problem. It means virtually that when we're designing new areas, we can't build crossroads. Anyway, going on a bit here, aren't I? Sorry. And the other thing, which is another pet hate really, London's not bad because we've managed to sort it out by and large, but the rest of the country, why do people park on the pavements? It really is such a visible sign that people don't actually give any kind of credence or priority to pedestrians. Oh, it's only a footway, use the car, put the car on it, you know. So don't want to get my wing mirror knocked off, so put it on the pavement. And really we need to tackle that. Norman Baker is actually having a bash at trying to deal with that. So yes, scatter cushions on the left. I would say, schemes like that, they are against the car, they annoy the driver, but they don't actually make the pedestrian happy. So it's no good. And compared with on the right, it's a ramp, just the same, but the ramp is clearly leading up into a raised portion of shared space or shared surface where pedestrians will have easier movement. And those sorts of ramps are accepted by drivers. Raised crossings, something which has definitely only emerged in the last few years, is the freedom to place a ramp, in this case a ramped pelican crossing, or maybe it's a puffin, can't remember, in a main street, and even without any warning sign on its approach. So this kind of occasional placement of ramps on main traffic streets is something new and would have been totally unthinkable 20 years ago. And lastly, what of the future? And it's really questions, because I don't know what the future holds, but Perhaps localism, the localism agenda, could mean greater local involvement in street design. And it's certainly true that the best traffic calming and environmental improvement schemes have been those that have been developed with the involvement of the local people. So if people are inspired to be more involved, then we could get better schemes. Secondly, there may be an opportunity in terms of the good design of public realm, because it's of value to business, to actually get some funding for improvement schemes through that route, through the private sector. Thirdly, there's an opportunity, since humps are so much disliked, there is an opportunity with technology to slow vehicles down without the need for humps. I think most people would welcome that, although they may not welcome the technology and what goes with it. But there also may be threats to the future, and these do concern me. Again, the localism agenda might be good in one way, but without the prompting and encouragement from central government, and they've made it perfectly plain they're not interested in doing that, with less central involvement, it may well be that the funding will not be there at the local level, and the guidance and urging, which, having worked in local authorities, I know that it tends to be if something comes from the ministry, and you have to take notice of it. If it comes from the leader of the council, you put it in your pending tray. And secondly, the public realm may be a low funding priority. Few budgets are protected these days, and with the cuts in public services, it would be, I suspect, quite natural for local councils to put the money into keeping libraries open and the schools running at the expense of investment in the public realm. And technology, again, it could mean, although we've got the technology to slow vehicles down and to make sure they drive within the speed limit, it could lead to a reliance on that rather than on design. So, on that particular point, the end of speed humps, automatic speed control or independent speed adaptation, as the London study has called it, or average speed cameras. We see them on motorways, but they could be applied in local areas, and trials are being conducted. It could remove the need for traffic calming measures, but at the same time, it could remove the justification for environmental measures as part of that. I won't go into this, but suffice it to say that the technology is on the way. You can control a vehicle externally, or you can at the very least provide the driver with a resistance which he has to overcome in order to exceed the speed limit. Those of you who sat nav have probably got the speed limit warning, the little bell that rings if you go 3 miles an hour over the limit. That's the sort of start of it all, I suppose. But there's no reason at all why the engine can't be physically restrained automatically when it passes, when it's in a low speed area. And future trends in residential areas, 20 miles an hour should become the default speed limit. I mean, in this area, we're a bit slow. I mean, I was in Berlin in 1990, and I was given this map. It was only just unified, so they felt that they had to include East Berlin, but basically it's a map of West Berlin, and virtually the entire city is covered in orange there, which denotes that it's 20 mile an hour zone. We're just beginning to think about 20 miles an hour as the default speed limit now. So the 20 mile an hour zones without traffic calming measures are, they work better in Germany because people abide by the law. And whether we adopt that straight off the shelf and expect it to work is certainly open to question at the moment. Mixed-use streets, well, we've seen quite a lot, and this hopefully will continue. Decluttering, space reallocation, and better design, such as we've seen in Camden High Street and Walworth Road, I saw a picture of just now. We've also seen the tearing down or ripping up of ring roads, such as in Nottingham, Birmingham, and Ashford, and recently Chatham. And we've seen new approaches to shared space in Exhibition Road, Brighton and Ashford. And an interesting question, I think, is will the private sector pick up on this street improvement, as I said, to provide some money? Because that's what we need. Thank you very much.